Okay, so for this assignment, I have to synthesize what I've learned. And so I spent a lot of time kind of brainstorming and you'll see I did a lot of trying to organize my thoughts, and then I just started running into a visual in my head where it was a circle, because really everything that I've learned in this class with teaching literacy acquisition, especially in writing, is that it's all connected. So here you'll see I've done my mind map, and I've started at the top with the 6 traits of writing because it's something that I think in real world we go back to. Everything we do in balanced literacy and everything we do in writer's workshop and everything that has to do with the writing process all can be pointed back to the 6 traits of writing. Because after all, that's what makes a good piece of writing, are the traits in writing. You have to have a good idea to engage your reader, right? And you have to organize those ideas in order for the reader to understand your idea. You have to have voice to really get your idea across, and to also show some personality in your writing, make it set apart. And then your word choice. Your word choice and voice, they tie together absolutely, because your word choice can be represented in your voice. And then you have to have sentence fluency, because you may pick great words, but if your sentence doesn't, if your sentences don't flow well, then you just have these out of place, wonderful words. And then of course you have to have your conventions, because if you're using the wrong your, or you don't have the correct punctuation, then your message isn't going to get across, your idea isn't going to get across. So that brought me to this idea. So ideas, I have it tied to, okay, so we have this trait of writing idea, and I tied it to the writing process, because my writing process, actually this is tied to pre-writing. In my pre-writing, I'm making a topic list. I'm trying to figure out what are some ideas that I want to write about, what can I connect to, and what's important to me that I can communicate that to a writer. I've tied the mini lesson intro into interactive writing. You could absolutely tie in your mini lesson and then model it in interactive writing, and then send your students back to pre-write or send your students back to to draft. And then when they're drafting, that's tied into, you can tie the drafting writing process into your writing time in your writing workshop. The same could go for organization. My pre-writing, I can tie that after an interactive writing session or even a shared writing session. Independent writing, that can be tied into drafting and even revising, where you're specifically looking at how to organize the ideas that you had. And so once you've given a mini lesson on how to come up with ideas and topics, things that you connect to, making those connections for your children and activating their schema, you're going to move on to how to organize that. So of course you're going to use the balanced literacy to help drive that. You're going to use writing workshops so that what you were driving in balanced literacy, they're now practicing in writing workshops. So now they're actually producing. Then after they're producing, you're gonna refine that in your writing process. Voice, I have in publishing. You could also do it in sharing. But sometimes it's hard for students to understand voice. So I put it in publishing because especially with younger students, when they share their writing is when their voice really comes out. For word choice, I tied word choice to revise, and then I tied it, you would give a mini lesson intro to this, and I think shared writing would be a great opportunity to really show word choice and then send them back to revise their own writing to look at their word choice. Sentence fluency, I tied to shared writing, again, because you're sharing, well, does this sentence make sense? How could we make this sentence using the word choice and the voice that that we're using? How could we do that? And then together as a teacher and student, you're really guiding the student with that. And then you give a mini lesson intro in that, and then you let them go into independent writing. And then sentence fluency, again, it could be in our sharing time and in our sharing in the writing process. Because once they're verbalizing it or they are composing it on a Word document, they start to really see sentence fluency better. And then my conventions, because this is kind of, what I've learned in this class and what I've learned as teaching is that I need to do less grammar, even though I think it's really important. I think it's more important to get my kids to write. So you'll see I have a ton of arrows for conventions because I think it's tied to everything. So I have it mainly tied to sharing, because once they're sharing before they publish is when they may be able to see, oh, I didn't put a comma in the right place, or I'm really excited, so I should really change this to an exclamation mark, or oh, this is a question, or oh, I started a new sentence. So you'll also see that that I tied drafting into shared writing, because in shared writing is probably where I would drive that instruction. I have a mini lesson and intro tied to shared writing, because I would really drive that instruction there and be like, well, does that make sense, or what are we missing? Because again, shared writing is the teacher and the students doing it together, and it's more student driven than interactive writing, which interactive writing would be more teacher driven. So all in all, I think ultimately I could have green arrows all over this page, because I think they're all connected. You can't have one without the other. So it was really hard for me to really make an organized flow chart, because they are all connected. So that is the synthesis of my learning.